Me again for another video. I've titled this one Christmas in July. I've managed to buy myself the most amazing book, and also I thought you might like to see a completed project from the tray that I've upcycled. Do you remember last time I said I bought this tray from a charity shop when we were on holiday in St Ives in Cornwall? I decided to paint it red because I've been reading that you need a pop of red in every room, but the problem was that I could see the outline of the decoupage that was originally on the tray. It was slightly raised, so I sanded it down, but you could just see a sort of shadow imprint. So I said I was going to go off and find myself a piece of wrapping paper, and that's exactly what I did. Now, does it look too Christmassy, or do you think I can get away with using this tray every day? So I wet this down, sprayed it down, I should say, on the back of the wall of the wrapping paper, and then glued PVA glue on the back, put the paper down, sort of worked halfway and smoothed that way and then smoothed this way. And because I had spritzed the paper to begin with, I had hardly any air bubbles at all. The only marking I've got on here, the sort of rough bits, is when I put the top coat on of my decoupage top coat varnish. I hadn't used it for quite a while and I hadn't stirred it properly, and I got an annoying little lump just there. So let me know in the comments whether you think this is Christmas only or whether I can use my tray all year round. Now, I bought this wrapping paper in Rochester. So Rochester is a beautiful historic city, about 25 minutes on a train from where I live. And now, if you're a member of my Facebook group, you'll know that I've posted some pictures in the group saying as well how much I love going to the cathedral there. They quite often have art exhibitions in the cathedral, and in fact they were working their way up to putting a floating plane into the nave. Is it the nave where normally you have all the seats? They've taken all the seats out, so it's quite a nice place to go to. You don't have to pay to go into the cathedral, but they do encourage donations. And another reason for going is they've got a very nice cafe, reasonably priced, in the crypt. Now, another reason to go to Rochester is to go and visit, I've immediately forgotten the name, Baggins Book Bazaar, which is a second-hand bookshop. It is huge. I've worked out where the flower arranging books are, and again, if you're a member of my Facebook group, you'll have seen I put a photograph of 2 whole rows of flower arranging books. I was tempted by some of them. One of them I did look at was the one about flower festivals, and if you follow my Facebook group about flower festivals, I've done a little bit of a run through, a bit of a page flick of that for you. Now, the book I did pick up was this, Christmas Tables. If you've been following along with me for a while, you know I absolutely love Christmas. I love visiting all the shops, looking at the decorations, Christmas stories. I went to Belgium, Bruges last year with a friend, and had a day trip out there looking at the Christmas markets. So I'll make sure I leave a link to that video in the description underneath this one. I'm also becoming ever so slightly more interested in interior design. Do you remember the video I posted a while back about my new book on maximalism? So I'm having a rethink about how we're decorating our home. So actually I was looking at the interior design shelves, which were right next to the flower arranging, and I managed to find this book. It was expensive though. It was over £10, but having looked online, I think this book is for sale for around about £30 or so. Yes, it cost me £10. So I will leave a link if you like the look of this book, and you can source one for yourself. But this is the story of Royal Copenhagen, so the ceramic company. I think I have previously owned some pieces of Royal Copenhagen in quite a modern style, but I bought them and then I believe I sold them on Vinted a while later. But you'll see here the pattern, which is blue fluted, is very, very similar to some of my own crockery. So this is my collection. This isn't Blue Vinted. This is the British version of Blue Vinted. Let me see if I can get that there. It's called Denmark, made by Furnivals. So I think, having been inspired by what I've read in this book, that I might see if I can extend my collection a little bit. What I'm particularly looking at is the flower here, decorations, and I've just learnt a little bit more about Blue Fluted, and therefore it's led me to, rediscover and explore my own collection of ceramic ware. So Royal Copenhagen, obviously enough, is Denmark, Copenhagen, and in the run up to Christmas, I think from mid-November to New Year's Eve, they invite significant people to use their porcelain to decorate tables, so tablescapes, and we do love a tablescape in flower arranging. And this is a story. I would say to begin with that the photographs are all modern, so it's not a history of the 50 years that they've done it. So you're not seeing previous tables, there's more modern photographs. But it does also explain a little bit of the history about the company, which I have found absolutely fascinating. There's a little bit of European history thrown in there too. Mentions Nelson and Napoleon, so it really is an inspiring book. And, a classic coffee table book. But I will say that I've actually sat down and read every single page. It has inspired me so much. So I do have this ongoing love of blue and white. I've got some Spode. I have been collecting the blue and white transfer wear, not the willow pattern because I don't like that, but I'm kind of getting to the stage where I'm finding some of my pieces are too highly decorated, and I quite like this paired back look. So it talks about how the winter celebrations, which were called Jol, Jol, have then transformed into Christmas celebrations, as they have done all over the world. And I talked about Danish blue. This is the Danish blue pattern, but here printed in black. So it's quite interesting to learn a bit more about the process of the ceramics making. And I must say, I'm still a little bit confused about some of the terminology. So if you know more than I do, let me know in the comments. So it's about embracing winter time. This is one of the patterns, Flora something, but it was talking about not just the flowers being beautiful as the flowers, but obviously includes things like moss and mushrooms as well. So interesting to look at. And the pottery, the Copenhagen, was originally owned by the King of Denmark in 1700s. And what they decided to do when they'd worked out how to do their pottery, learning from the Chinese imports and also from Meissen in Germany, was they decided when they set the pottery up that they wanted to have a catalogue of works they could sell. So they didn't sell anything for 4 years in order that they could build up an inventory. And that meant there was no money coming in, and it sort of had to be bailed out by the royal family. So just some ideas you might want to take into account when you're decorating your Christmas table. This is something that was done by, it's got ballet shoes hanging down from the ceiling, so I can't quite remember who did that, but presumably someone connected with the National Ballet in Denmark. And then the table with the fairy lights and, all mirrored, so it's all lovely and glitzy. I particularly like this, perhaps that's a new way of displaying your napkins for Christmas time. And as you probably know, that Denmark celebrate their big Christmas. Their celebration is on Christmas Eve, and they have their presents in the evening time and a big meal, and then they have people over for lunch the next day on what Christmas Day. But isn't this absolutely classic of what we would consider to be that Scandi-inspired look, quite pared back, the use of red and white. I like this linen tablecloth with the lines here on the napkins as well, the initials, and just simple candles in the background. And it says a little bit as well about what is traditionally served at the Christmas Eve meal. And they seem to have this association with Christmas Eve and marzipan pigs. I can't quite make the connection with marzipan pigs and Christmas time, but they make for pudding a very rich rice pudding with an almond in it. And a bit like us, if you find the sixpence in your Christmas pudding, if you find the almond, you get to win the prize, which is a marzipan pig. So as I say, this department store is the exhibition is open mid-November to the end of December, and you have to go up onto the first floor. And I have seen some videos. I do follow Diane in Denmark, and she's really great for the Fly Lady system and cleaning ideas. So I have made a playlist of several of her videos, and also videos as well of another lady who is British, I believe, who also lives in Denmark. Now, this has given me an idea. I'm thinking perhaps I need to buy myself a bust and I could decorate it for Christmas. I have also recently seen a picture where somebody had tied a headscarf around a bust and it just looked like lots of fun. So look at this, really, really grand. So Her Majesty the Queen in Denmark, she holds a New Year's Eve lunch or New Year's Day lunch. I can't quite remember. So this is set up with the crockery that she would use for that. These two centerpieces here. I think these are lots of carnations, an all year round flower, and just a little bit of green. So very traditional colours, the red, the whites and the greens. And there is the Queen herself. And there is the gentleman who's responsible for setting the tables. And see this measuring stick here. It's really, really precise. Oh, the other thing I love about this book, not only does it talk about sort of history in general, but it talks about the process of making the ceramic ware, but it also talks about the changing fashions on setting tables, and it talks about the Industrial Revolution, the Victorians having more money and spending, and also it talks about serving dinners in the French style and in the Russian style, and how all these fashions have changed the way that we set our tables for celebratory meals, because it required different shaped bowls and cutlery. It's all about the etiquette of whether you're keeping up to date with all the latest fashions. And apparently the fact we use on posh table settings, we use so many glasses is again part of that fashion. Originally you would just have had one glass, and sometimes servings would have been done from a buffet table and also served direct onto the table. So you tended to have all the meal that arrived at once, some of which the hot dishes were getting cold, but you could only eat what was near you because you would be serving yourself. And then the fashion changed again for courses to be introduced, so you would be served by the waiter, so you'd all eat the same thing at the same time, and the hot meals would remain hot. And there I was mentioning mushrooms, the whole part of the Flora Botanica, I think, embracing everything that is of nature. Now here is the shop here, which I recognise having watched those extra videos. And it's absolutely a fascinating read. I don't quite understand the box here, but is it Chinese takeaway in a box? I'm not quite sure. Got some lovely bits of history here. And this whole wall looks like it's covered in ivy leaves. It's actually with the blue pine that you would use on a traditional door wreath. And you notice that when you go abroad into Europe at Christmas time, that a lot of decorating takes place on the outside of buildings. I think perhaps it's coming over to here a little bit, because we do seem to be having fancier decorations around our shops, and perhaps even all year round garlands and flowers. This is the speciality Christmas wear, and this is called, this is where I'm getting a bit confused with understand the terminology. It's called star-fluted curves, and I was trying to work out what that meant. Star-fluted curves. I think the star element is the fact that the garlanded round is making a sort of multi-pointed star. but I don't understand the reference to curves unless it is the curve of the garland. It's the same with these dishes here. I didn't know whether fluted meant that the containers, like if I was talking about a fluted vase, I would talk a vase with a very specific shape that fluted outwards. So I don't know whether the fluting is actually this bit here, the little rim. I quite like this. If this is the fluting, I quite like this fluting. I've had other plates which I've got rid of where it's almost like the indentations were as if you'd made them with your finger and swirled around a little bit more. So my personal taste is I don't like that very much. But I love this table setting here. Very muted, very Scandi, very cougar, very pared back. And this is what I was saying here. The star fluted designs. It says, when Arnold Krogh, one of Denmark's most celebrated porcelain artists, came to the factory in 1884, he resumed the star fluted design, painting it in various garland decorations in blue underglaze and in delicate yet more costly purple overglaze. Underglaze, overglaze, I'm guessing under is you paint it, you fire it, and it gets a clear glaze on top, and the overglaze is over afterwards. Again, it's this kind of technicality I'm trying to work out. So hopefully that'll give me many more hours of trying to improve my education to understand what all these terms mean. So blue fluted is known as pattern number 1, and it's the foremost pattern in more than one respect. It was amongst the first to be painted when the manufactory started and has never gone out of production. The blue fluted is painted on various forms of porcelain and is still in great demand. So cups and saucers here. I've learnt that this is called high handled. The handle comes up over the top. And I think here, this is, they talk about lace and half lace. I think when you've got holes in the china, I think I would know that as reticulated. I don't know if that is the same thing. But I'm just having a bit of a quandary about what those terms mean as well, because I've actually looked on the website for Royal Copenhagen and I don't quite understand the difference between a fluted and a half fluted design. So absolutely gorgeous pictures. Wouldn't it be lovely to live like this? And also if you do watch the videos that I'll put in my playlist, some of the shop, they seem to have totally cleared out the shop. So I don't know what it looks like normally, but they do have display cases, so it is a little bit of a museum as well. So candles here, look at there must have been a draft there as the candlelight is moved across. And collector's Christmas. Now, for Christmas last year, I gave one of my family members a tiny little plate, which was made from Royal Copenhagen. I'm sure I took some photographs. I'm going to have to revisit those and have a look. But there were 2 factories that make up Royal Copenhagen, the original one and another one called, I can't immediately, oh, here it is, Bing and Grondel. And I think it was that part of the company that started doing the Christmas plates. Oops, there is the dog barking. So I might, sometimes I've seen these at car boot fairs, so I might, just keep my eye open. I'm not entirely convinced I like them as decorations, but it's nice to, when you've learnt something, to actually see it out in the wild. And also there's these little Scandi trees here. I'm sure we've made those in previous videos. Perhaps even the video when I went through that phase of filming in the garden every week. I think that may be in there. But look, the difference between what you're doing for an exhibition, where the table settings are set out on bun moss, and then with a galvanised plate, that might even be sort of underplate with an integral candle coming out of it. I've done that before, again influenced by Diane in Denmark, when she had her pewter plates, I think for New Year's Eve, and with the little candle clips that you can get, so each plate had its own individual candle. So candlelight really does seem to be a thing in Scandinavian countries, I guess because they're so much further north, and it's a way of brightening up the dull winters. But if you do watch the videos in the playlists I've made, you'll see that actually in the shop there's live candles burning, which, huge health and safety risk, but obviously everybody in those Nordic countries is used to having live candles and knows that they need to be extra careful around them. So here's the tablescape here of these trees. You might find these trees called Grinch trees after the film, which I've never watched. Not really my cup of tea, but it's I think these are pine needles here, and you attach them on, and then you can be a bit more random with spraying glue on it, and then you can sort of get the pine needles to stick where you want them to stick. It says here that people in the Nordic areas are comparatively comfortable these days, but they still hark back to return to the origins of, a simpler life. So here, the setting here, massive Christmas tree, sort of a stag's horn chandelier, and a very simple tabletop there. Oh, isn't that gorgeous? Romanticism in the countryside. The tablecloth pooling on the floor, the blue and white, the doors that will open. So it's not all blue and white. They do have quite colourful pottery as well. So they're talking, they're going through the history of the pottery as well. And it's talking about the Art Deco period. And this was something that was designed in the Art Deco period. It says that its Turin's cups and jugs are shaped like inverted Aztec pyramids. Is that an Aztec pyramid? So lots of lovely green, but still looking really festive, viburnum opulus, black candles, slices of lime in the water jugs, just to, to repeat the coloration of the greens. This looks like a little bit of Constance Spry, doesn't it, with curly kale sitting in the plate there. And these pyramids. Did you ever make one of these? Perhaps if you've been trained, floristry training at your local college, I sort of can remember making those. So it is interesting just to learn, much about everything. Sort of, you learn one thing and it tips you off to another thing, that tips you off to another thing, and everything in the world all interlinks together. So this is the name I was struggling to find, Flora Danica. The Flora Danica service was commissioned in 1790 as a gift from the King of Denmark to Catherine the Great of Russia, because the King of Denmark thought he may have caused offence because they were in an ally with Russia, and I don't think he came up with the goods. So therefore, he presented Catherine the Great with this ceramic service. It's quite highly decorated with gold around the outside. Look, just a little cup set on a couple of books. It really does give you all sorts of ideas for how you could style your home. So we talk fancily that this is tablescape. It just means setting the table, making it look pretty. These hyacinth bulbs down here, quite tall and white. The pattern is replicated there in the vases where they've planted some twigs and then hung baubles, and then the Danish heart. Have you seen the Danish hearts? They're quite craft projects. They sort of interweave papers together, and then it comes in a heart shape, and then you would put a few little sweet gifts inside. Really pared back here. These are the tiny little candles. They look as if they might be clipped onto the branches running down the centre of the table there. Looks here in the middle of the party. Did you see the Christmas beer that's brewed? It does look as if this table setting, the Christmas beer is being well and truly enjoyed. And the chairs are all scattered all over the place, looking ever so slightly dishevelled. And this one here is the 1970s, designed by, I don't know how to say the name properly, R.J. Griest. He was a Danish goldsmith in the 1970s, and he designed these conch shells. And it took quite a lot of specialist activity to get the dye to sit in the grooves here, as it would do for a natural shell. Can you see it's slightly darker in these areas? A bit more avant-garde, based on the ring that he was famous for. and then it's been produced in white as well, sort of a simplified version. And look, there's the blue fluted, but in this purpley colour. And they say that we commonly associate blue fluted with blue, as per my knockoff here, but it's believed the Danish word for the pattern was mussel mallet, and which originally referred to the blue colour, but they don't actually know what the word means. So here it's painted in green. It talks about the overglaze being a different colour. I think that sometimes the colour went wrong, so they overglazed it to sort of correct the colour, and it came out with a different hue to it. And the dark green is quite unusual. I do like here with the reindeer furs on the side to keep warm, pheasant on the windowsill, lovely green, mossy greens with the scarlet and deeper reds. And here we are. I mentioned Nelson. So Nelson was victorious in a battle against the Danish fleet in 1801, and he ordered a set of porcelain from the factory to be given to his mistress, Lady Hamilton. Interesting story of Lady Hamilton. Born into poverty, but she gained international fame for her grace and beauty. But I believe she was having an affair with somebody, but because that somebody had to marry for reasons of wealth, Lord Hamilton took this lady, Emma Hart, as his wife, and it was his uncle, it was his nephew that had to marry for money. So she married the uncle and then went on to have an affair with Nelson. All very confusing. And this is one of the sets that was in Nelson's order. It said that he'd bought a night table or toilet case with brackets. So those were for the Hamiltons, and the lunch service was similar to this one here. So it'd be quite interesting to see all these historic bits and pieces, weird objects. Now this is peculiar, again, a bit avant-garde, totally different shapes. You can see just the way it's all been set together is really, really modern. And this, I absolutely love this picture, which is why I got my own Denmark crockery out from Furnivals. But doesn't that look amazing? I like the fact it looks quite light, quite freeing, whereas if you look at the more heavily blue painted willow pattern and things like that, it does, it has a darker, heavier look, and I just think looks so special. And here's the Danish flag, the white cross on the red background, the little bits of red flashing through. The pomegranates here, you could put apples in there. There's some the baker's twine, there's a little soldier tree decoration, an angel, present wrapped up. Just really, really simple ideas which you could adapt at home. And there's a little bit of history. They constantly seem to be going back to the original of the blue fluted and then reinventing it and changing something a little bit. And it was originally a copy of something from Meissen, and it does say that they changed the flower. Again, this isn't proper blue fluted, but it was a chrysanthemum in the middle, and they made it to a much more stylised flower, and then had the leaves, instead of the leaves going up and down the stem, they came out from the side of the rose, from the flower. And it also said something about the number of rings around the central flower. So it really is, it's like one of these things, you're learning a new language when you start looking at a new bit of knowledge, and you really have to get your head around what they're talking about. But it interests me, so I'm happy to do that. I'm wondering now whether I should, with the summer holidays here, think about another trip to the V&A in London, because look at their ceramics department. Because now I've had my eyes open to this, it would make me look in the cabinets for it as well. They said the little tops to the serving bowls are little snail shells circling round, and this is the lace, the sort of reticulated bit where it's been punched through. And I just absolutely love this. Just a tiny little, it looks like a sort of linen or grosgrain ribbon with the natural colour to it, and then just a red edge around the outside, and then a little bit of holly. Looks like a longer shoot of holly they've curved round and fed back into the vase with some pine and ivy leaves. Oh, just look, it looks fabulous, doesn't it? Some close-up shots there. And this is where again going back to the pattern, and someone else is taking a look at it and reinventing it. So again, my knockoff version, but you can see the artist here has just taken a little bit of the flower pattern, a little bit of the detailing around the edge here to give it a modern look. Dark and moody with a big door wreath at the back there. I quite like this as well, the pine cones sitting on top of it. It's either a narrow vase or a candlestick. I might think about doing that for myself. And as well as having the blue fluted, they talk a lot about how the development of flowers took place. So this is known as the blue flowers because it's blue flowers. And got a little bit more intricate with the pattern designs. Oh, look, yes. Here is, do you know who this is? This is the Danish author Karen Blixen, photographed at her home in Kenya, drinking, she's got an owl on her shoulder, drinking tea from the Blue Flower Cup. Now, absolutely resonated with me. Do you remember watching Out of Africa in the late 1980s? I went to watch this with a boyfriend when I was at university and I cried all the way home. Such a moving film. But I decided that I would buy Karen Blixen's book, and I think, I'm not entirely sure whether there's a picture of said boyfriend in the back. I haven't looked at that for 30 years. I'm not sure if I finished this book. It was quite a difficult read, but perhaps it's one. Perhaps there's a little message in the front as well. Oh, it was obviously a present. Oh, let me just have a little look at that. Remembering days gone by. What does it say? Oh, look at that. How sweet, how sweet. I'm just remembering that from years ago. I might read this again. The thing was, it's not a story, it's not the book of the film, it is the book that influenced the film. I also found this as well. I wonder what this is inside. An African love story. Then I got a magazine article. So where did this come from? Page 19. So I don't know what magazine that was from. It might have been the colour supplement from my parents' weekend newspaper, perhaps. But look, perhaps I should reread that. It says she was a young Danish baroness who wrote the classic book about life in Africa, and he was the eternal adventurer, the last of the great white hunters, Meryl Streep and Robert Redford. I did check actually on Netflix last night whether it's still available to watch, and it's not at the moment. And it says here, photographs of Blixen from the Royal Library in Copenhagen. So yes, perhaps I shall have a little walk down memory lane later on. Amusing sculptures and figures. It says that the fashion was at one time was to have lots of figures made out of sugar and gum, paper mache, and they would be distributed along the table along with all the other place settings. And then when they found out how to make the figurines in China, that is in ceramics, they then moved those figurines from the dining table to display cabinets and into the living spaces a little bit more. So it's just interesting seeing that little bit of how things change over time. And it does talk about the the designers behind the pieces and when they from the several hundred years ago and what contribution they made to all these pieces. Look, ice skates here, gone for the plain blue. Oh, look, two little pieces of pine put together and tied so it looks a little bit like a love heart. Oh, I do like that idea. Again, very modern here. This talks about the taste in Napoleonic times. And the painting of the crockery pieces, highly skilled. It sounds like they poached the workers from other businesses, so they could come and learn what they were doing. So this again is with a little ridged edge. I think this is a modern take. It's not laid out in that traditional way. There was a huge fashion, wasn't there, for blue and silver Christmases. When was that? Was that early 90s? Or perhaps was that around 2000 with the millennium? But I am thinking that blue does look quite festive. Not sure I'd like it with silver so much. But they've planted these little cups or mugs with moss. This is a sort of a sea theme. There's some shells in here. You're going with all the fishing floats hanging above in a decorative way. And the different colour. I think the colours, they said that it was brown, green, purple and blue, I think, were the colours those designs came in. A little tiered tray here. Absolutely gorgeous. That green is rather lovely. And it's, they talked about the Dowager Queen Julianne. And as we go through, so I would say this book at £10 has given me so much joy. It's got me thinking about Christmas, what I might be doing. It's got me planning, journeys up to London to see if I can just have my attention drawn by something else. So if you are intrigued by the book, I will make sure I leave a link in the description and you can buy your own full-priced copy. Well, that's all for me for now, and I'll see you again next time. Oh, I forgot to tell you about the dancing around the Christmas tree once the candles have been lit. Okay, from me to you. Christmas in July with a little bit of a walk up memory lane.